This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Well, I'm sitting here in a place that I have never been in the city of Annapolis. I'm up on the, I think, third floor of the William Peka house.
Second floor.
Second floor.
Good guess.
over the kitchen in what may have been staff or potentially slaves' quarters, correct?
This is potentially where it's directly above the kitchen. So this office space, back in the days of William Peka, it's highly likely that it was used for quarters for the servants, including enslaved people here in Annapolis, in the William Peka house, serving here. Yep.
Right. Well, that voice that you hear is not the ghost of William Peka, for sure. That is Mary-Angela Hardwick, who is the Vice President of Education here at Annapolis, Historic Annapolis. Did I get the title right?
You did. I am the VP of Education and Interpretation for Historic Annapolis, and my offices are indeed right here in the William Peka House.
It's a beautiful office. I was just, before we started recording, I said, I think this is the coolest office in town.
You know, HA has a lot of wonderful properties. So the offices over at Shiplap are very special and unique as well. Part of our mission is to preserve and protect those incredible historic properties. And we're very, very fortunate as staff to have some of our offices in some of those really special places like the William Peka House and Shiplap House on Pinckney Street.
Well, you have been with Historic Annapolis for 3 years, and you were somewhat brought in this. The purpose of this discussion today is actually of the fabulous new museum that just recently opened up down at the bottom of Main Street. And you were somewhat brought in to spearhead that, correct?
So, yes, when I was hired as the VP of Education, and so my primary responsibilities are the educational programs of Historic Annapolis. And at the time that I was hired, a top priority was to finish the work of the Museum of Historic Annapolis at 99 Main Street. And the organization had been working on this project. My background, most of my career has been spent in museum education and in the creation of historical museums, including I was very fortunate to start my career working on the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island restoration projects. And so, with that background, I was very excited to accept the position and to make a primary focus of my work the development of the script for the new museum, and then to work with the exhibit designers as well as the exhibit fabricators to ultimately design, fabricate, and install the new museum.
Well, okay, you're obviously a little bit biased because of your position here with Historic Annapolis, but if you take that hat off and as an historian yourself, an educator yourself, is Annapolis like a gem of a place for a person like you, an historian?
It really is. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've worked in a lot of wonderful places, but Annapolis is really super special. Like, I'm really delighted that at this point in my career, to be here in Annapolis, in this amazing historic city where everywhere you walk, you're surrounded by history, and to be at Historic Annapolis, doing this work to help create wonderful education programs for the public, for not only residents here in Annapolis, but for all of the Annapolis visitors.
Right. Well, Mary-Angela, I want to talk about the Historic Annapolis Museum, which has and I don't want to say it's an exhibit because it's a permanent exhibit, correct?
It's a permanent exhibition that fills the entire building. So it's not just like a one-room temporary exhibit. It is a 3-floor exhibit that fills the entire museum space.
Well, this is the one that just opened up and is at 99 Main Street, which is right at the corner of Main and Green. And it's called Annapolis, An American Story. And it sounds pretty, and I will say this is a fabulous museum. We had a chance to tour it, I guess, back in December as it was doing a soft opening. It just had a full-time 7 days a week opening probably about 3 weeks ago. And it is an amazing, amazing museum. And we really wanted to talk about it. And if, you talk about when I was walking through, I mean, you've got the welcoming video, from there that it sort of explains the history of Annapolis from way back when up to and what you're going to be able to see.
And it gives you that amazing flyover, right? I mean, what I think is so beautiful about the film is all that amazing footage where you fly over Annapolis and you see all of these historic sites and you see how in close proximity they all are. The Naval Academy, to the State House, to the Banneker Douglas Museum, and how beautiful the city is.
Well, it truly is. And you go into the lobby, you've got the each room, I guess, and I'm probably going to screw this up, and you'll correct me, I'm sure, but each room is set up sort of as a timeline as you're going through different eras of Annapolis history.
That's right. It's a chronological exhibit that's designed to be self-guided for visitors to spend as much or as little time as they want. If you don't want a quick spotlighted overview of the city, you can move very quickly through the museum. If you want to do a deeper dive and read every single label and caption of every image, there's a robust story within it. So it's really designed to be self-guided based on visitors' interests, and it is a spotlighted chronological story that's illustrated by beautiful images as well as some amazing iconic objects, including the original acorn from the top of the State House.
I remember reading about that when it came in the Capitol. It was the old wooden acorn that had been in storage for years and years and years, and you snagged it.
We did. It was in storage. The new one, obviously, on top of the State House today is a replica. The one that we have in the museum needed replacement, and to basically be able to bring that object back out of storage so that visitors can really see it close up, and even to understand that it's an acorn, and what that symbolism was, a symbolism of knowledge, of wisdom, and why, that particular symbol would have been chosen for the top of the State House. And then to encourage visitors to go from our museum up to the State House itself and to visit that incredibly special place.
Well, that's one of the interesting things is that, Annapolis is a living museum. The city is itself.
We call it a museum without walls, that basically you walk around the city and, all of history surrounds you in Annapolis.
Well, and it's difficult to contain it within 4 walls or 8 walls or whatever, 3 floors or whatever you've got at 99 Main Street. And one of the things that struck me as I was going through is to look out the windows and then look down at the windowsill beneath you. Because we are a very compact town, the core of the historic town. Okay, now obviously the town expands a lot further, and the history goes beyond just this little 2 circles and a couple spokes going out. But as the center, as you look down, you look out the window and you see Ego Alley and City Dock, and you can learn about the canneries that were there, the oysters, the boats, the workboats and everything else.
We have those special window boxes. The windows the views, as you're saying, are magnificent, and people are attracted to these windows. They're some of the best views, I think, in Annapolis. And so when you go and you look out these windows, we've created window boxes that show images of what that view looked like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And what visitors realize is how much hasn't changed, that history is all still there. And we hope that when people then go back down to the street and move around the city, they've gained a greater appreciation for those buildings because they know a little bit more about the stories about them, and understand how, so much of the historic fabric is still there, in part because the community has such a strong preservation ethic, and in part through the work of Historic Annapolis.
Well, I'd say a huge part in the work of Historic Annapolis.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, and what I thought was very amazing is that people that come here for first-time visitors, they may not realize how compact the city is. And I think that as you look out the window and you're reading, wow, how about the State House, the oldest continuous use State House in the country, and this and that, and it's like, oh, it's right there.
It's a block away. It's just 1 block in that direction. Gee, the Naval Academy is 1 block in that direction. Gee, we can walk to the Banneker Douglas Museum 2 blocks in this direction. And a short little water taxi ride or a walk over to Eastport, and you're at the Maritime Museum. So I think that is a discovery for visitors. But what we hope is for residents too who come to visit to learn the story of their community, that they realize. I mean, many of them that, wow, there's a lot to do here that, we don't need to go, down to Charleston. We've got, amazing stuff right here in our own hometown.
We get so jaded when we live in a community. And I mean, I've got a laundry list of things that I can complain about and, and everything else. But we do become very jaded. And I always try to make it a point to do 2 or 3 touristy things a year, okay, for lack of a better word.
Be a tourist in your own hometown. Exactly.
Because there's always something new that I'm going to learn. There's
beautiful exhibits that are always changing. Banneker Douglas has amazing exhibits that they rotate. Hammond Harwood House opens a beautiful new exhibit every year. They just opened one on Charles Wilson Peel. So there's this incredibly special place that we live in. And it's not just the same exhibits all the time, but we have this opportunity to see all these wonderful changing exhibits every year.
Mm-hmm. Hey, here's a question for you. We'll throw this out and see if you got this history question right. Out at the point of the Naval Academy, right where the harbor meets the Severn River, there's a Trident light. Do you know what's unique about that light, in particularly the base?
Well, I wish I had Glenn Campbell, our senior historian, with me right now, because I bet you he does, because I don't. So this I'm going to be enlightened.
And I will say I learned this on the Wilma Lee with the Annapolis Maritime Museum and Park last summer, or maybe it was the summer before. I think it was the first season that they got her. There is a canister embedded in the concrete down there, which has water from every sea, all the 7 seas.
Wow.
That was gathered there, and that was placed in there. And I'm like, that's freaking cool.
And you wouldn't have known it unless you had gone on the Wilma Lee, right?
being the little tourist. I mean, at one point, I know it was a watermark tour. One time I was taking the Miss Anne or something like that, where they were saying that way back in colonial days, waterfront property was no good. You wanted to live at the top of the hill, away from the water, because they would take their raw sewage and toss it into the gutter, and it would go down. And by the time you're on the waterfront property, I mean, you've got everybody else's stuff running down.
It was the waterman's space. It was those who had a little more money wanted to live, more elegantly up on Church Circle, up on Duke of Gloucester Street.
Yeah. So I mean, it's wonderful, and I do encourage everybody always to take a look, and whether it be through the Historic Annapolis Museum at 99 Main Street, or as you mentioned, the Banneker Douglas Museum, or you look at the Hammond Harwood House. Certainly
the William
Peka House, the Bryce House when it gets up.
And we just reopened the Historic Warehouse, which is down near City Dock, and there's all brand new exhibits there as well as that amazing model that shows City Dock in the late 1700s, early 1800s, very detailed, and that's just reopened, and that's free.
Where is that?
It's literally right between McGarvey's and Iron Rooster. The historic warehouse is right at the base of Pinckney Street, right there.
Interesting. Okay.
That's an HA property, and like I said, brand new exhibits there.
Writing that down, that is on my list of things I need to do next time I'm strolling around down City.
Well, like you said, for people especially who live here, you never want to lose your sense of wonder. That as you wander these historic streets, to never lose sight of how incredibly amazing Annapolis is, and how beautiful and special in terms of, because of the community's commitment to its historic preservation.
Right. No, you guys have done a thing. The museum, again, the one thing that struck me as well was that it was not and I'll get in trouble for using the term, but it was not whitewashed, in that it was like George Washington slept here, and we've got the William Peka, and we've got and all of this little colonial history, which is all tied up in the little history books, but it was all inclusive. It turned around and you talked about the history of Carr's Beach, which was out there, the old Fourth Ward and everything else, which I think was wonderful.
When I arrived, I think that's what struck me most, is that Annapolis has an amazing history, and it's an incredibly diverse history. And so it was really important to me to reach out to the community, to talk to people who've lived here for generations, whether it be Irish immigrants, German immigrants, the African-American community, Jewish immigrants, Italian immigrants, Greek immigrants, Filipinos. And so I was introduced to various community leaders who then introduced me to particular families, residents, who were so gracious to open up their family archives, to share the images, the family photos, as well as some family objects to help to illustrate their family stories. And so, yes, it's a broad, inclusive story. It is, I think, a true story of Annapolis, where you're getting that diverse story right from the beginning, and the community's story is all interwoven. And so even, as I said, it's a chronological story that goes right to the present. And so it was very important that when children come, particularly as school groups, particularly those who come from elementary schools right here in Annapolis, that they see themselves in it, that Annapolis is diverse today, who are the new arrivals here, and that they see themselves, that this is their story, that this is their town, that this is their town's history, and that they're part of it. And all of us today, tomorrow we're history. So and for people to know that and to feel that that all of the stories of Annapolis are shared in this, broad overview of the community's history, that everybody sees themselves in it. And we called it Annapolis, an American Story, because so much of the community's story is in many ways a mirror of the nation's story. Annapolis, there are deep connections to the national story, in terms of the Revolution, in terms of, home of the Naval Academy, as well as the Civil Rights Movement, but that also as a community, it mirrors the history of so many other American communities. And so that kind of double entendre that's in that title, Annapolis, an American Story.
And it truly is. Again, there are some, we'll say, darker sides of Annapolis's history.
As there are in the nation's history.
Everywhere.
Exactly. And that is true of the nation's history. And so, yes, in the museum, there is a recognition and acknowledgement that this was a segregated community. And we look at the Jim Crow era, and we look at segregation in education, in entertainment, Carr's Beach. We look at segregation in the medical community. In particular, we look at the story of Dr. Aris T. Allen and his wife, Dr. Faye Allen, and their work in the medical community, serving the Black community, particularly in parole. And so we look at all of these stories and we acknowledge the history. Right.
No, and I think that you've done it very well and very beautiful. I mean, I think this is a welcoming exhibit, a welcoming museum, to coin a phrase from County Executive Pittman, but for all to use, because this is not just a place for visitors. It's a place for residents. It's a place for all residents to come and take a look and learn a little bit, because you will learn
children, grandchildren. And I think also what I really love when County Executive Pittman, when he made his remarks at the grand opening, he said, "I'm not a museum person," and a lot of people aren't. He said it was just a wow experience for him. Like, he enjoyed it so much. And I thought, if we've hit a wow with, someone who says, point blank, I'm not a museum person, I don't like museums, for him to say it was a wow, I was like, that really pleased me, because I thought, well, we must be doing something right. We are even engaging those who don't think they want to be engaged.
True. Well, you go through there, I'm sure you don't see many people looking at things like stroking their chin going, I like the way the flowers reflect the sunlight or whatever.
No, and I think what people really love is some of the interactives. So we have what we call spinners, and they're fast facts. So it's that kind of quick information that you want, who was Annapolis named for? Who settled here first? We look at the Native American community. We also look at fast facts like that the Naval Academy moved to Newport, Rhode Island during during the Civil War. So it's these fun facts, and you get them by spinning these little spinners, is what we call them. And again, people have fun with it. And then there's a timeline that wraps every single room, and people are loving it because it's lots of just little fast facts, trivial information that people find so fun. So there's an image of a horse. If you go and look at that, you're looking at the storytelling about, horse racing and the history here in the United States, in particular, its roots here in Annapolis, and that George Washington used to come to Annapolis to bet on the races.
and right now, there's probably 20,000 residents of the city going, horse racing in Annapolis?
Yep.
I thought we had to go to Laurel for that.
No, out on West Street. And George Washington was one of those placing his bets. He kept a very precise diary, and he even notes, when he came, how much he bet, what he lost.
how much he won, whatever it may be.
I think he lost more than he won. I think that was part of his distress.
Well, I'm glad that bit of history sort of stayed with Annapolis. It goes with our police department. You'll come with less than you came with. Just to give the police department and the parking a little bit of a hard time. But you've also partnered up with all of the other museums, or most of the other museums in the area, and everybody does something a little bit differently.
And deeper. So what we've done at the Museum of Historic Annapolis is we've given visitors and residents a broad overview of the community's story and its connections to the national story. So it's big spotlights. Throughout the exhibit, we have what we call the partner site icon, and it reappears throughout the exhibit telling visitors where they can go to learn more. So if you want to learn more about the age of elegance during the colonial period in Annapolis, go to the William Paca House, go to the Hammond Harwood House where you can learn more. You can do a deeper dive. If you want to learn more about African-American history, go to the Banneker Douglas Museum. If you want to learn more about the Naval Academy's history, to go out to the Naval Academy. A maritime and environmental history, go to the Annapolis Maritime Museum. So we encourage people to start at the museum where you get this great overview, but then to go out and based on your interests, explore more. And I think what visitors as well as residents discover when they come to the museum is how many other places there are to go in Annapolis and how many other stories there are where they can do these deeper dives.
I'm sure a bunch of people that are listening are going, wow, I didn't realize we had Pega, Harwood. They're just sitting there counting on that and everything else. But looking as this is now opening as the and the unofficial title of the lead pusher througher, you sort of push this through everything. What makes you smile the most yourself now that we're done, open, and
what makes me smile the most is to know that I think that Historic Annapolis has helped to bring forth a full, robust, diverse, and inclusive history of this community. And I think also what makes me smile is when visitors come and residents, that they have this wow experience and say, I didn't realize this history, and I didn't realize the incredible connections of Annapolis to that larger national story. And what I'm most grateful for is the community's involvement itself. That if this is a wonderful museum, and if the exhibit is a wonderful exhibit, it's because the community came forward and helped to tell the stories. They shared their images of the old Fourth Ward. They shared their images of immigrant ancestors who came first to this community. And so it's a wonderful storytelling that's been brought forth because the community got involved with it.
And there's never been a real cohesive story. I feel anyhow that tying it together. There have been bits and pieces. Okay, I can go to the Banneker Douglas Museum. I can go into the William Peka House. I can go to the Annapolis Maritime Museum. But to sort of tie it all together and see how they all...
Yeah, the Museum of Historic Annapolis, I would say, is the place where, visitors and residents get the answer to the question, where can I go to get, the overview story of Annapolis? Well, you can go now to the Museum of Historic Annapolis and get that overview.
Right. How was it built? Obviously, Historic Annapolis is a nonprofit. Your membership based in grants and donations and everything else. But was this all done with private money and grants?
It was done through private donations as well as through grants and partnership, grant money, including the National Park Service, the IMLS, as well as private donors. So we had significant, and all those donors are listed. There's right. So many of them.
There's a plaque.
They're all given credit. But yes, in partnership through donations made through private donations as well as through grants from granting organizations. Yep.
That's great. Who curates all the stuff?
Our curator is Robin Maddie Gower. She's an incredible curator. She brought together amazing objects that are some are donated, some are on loan, and I really encourage people to go to the museum and the objects alone. You're looking at things from the Revolution, and there are some incredible objects that are one of a kind that there is no other example of that you're going to see in the museum.
I know I saw a sewing machine from the Naval Academy from their tailor shop back in, and I'm going to totally stumble on whatever year it was, but
the sewing machine is on loan from the Naval Academy Museum, and it originally belonged to Henry Ciccarone, who came to Annapolis as a teenager from Italy, began to work as a tailor at the Naval Academy, and then spent his entire career there, and ultimately became such a precise tailor. He was even doing tailoring for U.S. presidents. And so we actually were talking to members of the Ciccarone family. They were sharing their story and photographs of the family. And during that same time, Robin was talking to the Naval Academy as well. And when they mentioned this sewing machine, we were so excited that it was Henry Ciccarone. So we were able to bring together that amazing storytelling that the family was sharing with this object that was in the collection at the Naval Academy and that they were willing to then loan us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great story.
That's awesome. And you said some of these are on loan. So, I mean, obviously the museum itself is a moving, living thing as well. And I know you had mentioned that it's from the earliest days to the current days, so everybody can see themselves in it. This is my town. This is my thing. And I do know that you cover the Capitol shooting, which perhaps I think is probably one of the most recent.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and we're really very honored that we have now on loan the Pulitzer Prize that was given to the Capitol Gazette in 2018.
So I mean, this is, except for the youngest of children, this is something that, people realize this is history. This is our town, as dark as the day was in June, but it is a part of our history. Yeah. It's there. And, it's going to be updated, I'm presuming. I mean, I don't know whether you're kicking yourself in the butt because now with the Elktonia Beach acquisition, now that's now we've acquired that and we're able to restore, keep a piece of that history living and be able to use again. But I mean, obviously the part of the display where you're talking about Carr's Beach and how it was a huge African-American go-to place. And I mean, that's obviously going to have to be updated at some point.
And what's wonderful about the way the exhibit's designed, and visitors, visitors don't usually notice exhibit design, but if you do notice, what they'll see is that everything is individual pieces. So we can update any particular information in the exhibit by just replacing a single part of it. We don't have to redo the whole museum. I don't even have to redo an entire room. Everything is individual pieces, and so you can update text, you can update image. If there's additional scholarship that comes forth on a particular subject, all of that information can be updated. And then also we have a community gallery where we will continue to rotate stories. So we'll maybe do an exhibit on a particular individual or a neighborhood, a club, an ethnic group, a faith community. We'd love to get kids involved, school groups involved, where they can curate their own exhibit about their school or about a family history. So that is a rotating, what we call a community gallery that'll constantly be rotating. So there'll always be a new exhibit in the museum. Most of the exhibit is a permanent exhibit space, but there will always be a rotating exhibit as well at 99 Main Street.
That's fantastic. Well, let's sort of get down into somewhat of the nitty-gritty. Can the community help you? I mean, are you looking for volunteers? I mean, the easy thing is, yes, become a member of Historic Annapolis. And memberships are $50 a year for a single and $75
membership
for
is I think it's an incredible bargain because as a member of Historic Annapolis, not only are you, committed to the mission of preserving what this community has in terms of its history, but membership also provides you with unlimited access to the museum, unlimited access to the Peka House, especially the garden.
Not this office, though.
Not this office. No, anybody can call and visit me. I'm happy to meet with anybody. But no, in terms of just, especially if you have family coming into town, to be able to then bring them over, over and over again, or just to be able to sit out in the Peka Garden in any season and just, it's such a beautiful, special place. And as a member, you can just come over anytime, drink a cup of tea out in the garden. It's really a very special. Plus, with membership, you get all these discounts for our lectures. We have virtual lectures, which you can, tune in when they're live. But we also send you a link so you can,
watch it anytime.
You can watch it anytime you want. So you don't have to make a commitment to a Thursday night at 7:00 or Tuesday night at 7:00. You can basically get the link. So there's lots of benefits to membership at HA.
Absolutely. But in the museum, can people volunteer to help? Or?
So we are always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people who would like to be docents, and you would serve as a docent at the Peka House as well as the museum. We're always looking for VSAs, if people would like to become, a paid visitor service associate and be at the front desk at the Peka House or the new museum and offer tours. So we are always looking for people to join us, whether as members or as volunteers or as docents, VSAs. So we love to hear from people.
Well, you can check all that out at probably the easiest website I've ever heard of, Annapolis.org.
Annapolis.org. I was going to say, so easy to remember. It's very uncomplicated.
Real simple. The museum is a paid museum. to get in. Okay, the admission is $10.
With lots of discounts. We've got discounts for AAA's members and military members and seniors, children, families. So it is a $10 adult regular admission, but there are lots of discounts as well.
Right. And the hours are Monday through Saturday from 10 to 5 now that you're not open just the weekends that you were for a little bit. And then Sunday from 11 to 5.
That's correct.
Which is wonderful. And I mean, I do suggest that you go there, spend an hour going through the museum and get a game plan and take a look and see what else we have. When you're up there on the second or third floor of that museum looking out the window, literally at your feet, laid out right in front of you, and explore our town. Maybe take 2-3 weekends, maybe whatever it may be.
The weather's getting better. And to come down to City Dock and to walk around and just enjoy this special town that we live in. And like you said, to check out, a museum each weekend or once a month, I think people will be very surprised if they're not aware of how much there is to do right here in this hometown. I've
been threatening my girlfriend that we were going to grab a B&B, maybe like at the Flag House Inn or something like that for a weekend, and just totally come in blind.
Yes.
And say, okay, so Marty, Carmel, what should we do? And see what Annapolis has to offer from the sight of a visitor. Yes. It's wonderful. But I want to talk a little bit too as we start to wrap up. But Historic Annapolis and all the different things that you've got. You mentioned all the perks that go along with the membership. And membership honestly is a bargain at $50. I think it's $75 for a family.
Yes.
And it goes up from there. I mean, you can get some. I mean, I think you do the.
We have circles.
You do the $100,000 a year membership, and they, you get a free party or something.
We have some special circles where you can be part of the curator's circle if that's your interest. We have a family circle. We've got the garden circle. So there's some special interest circles, which are nice also because it connects you to people who have shared interests. So if we go on a kind of a field trip to places outside of Annapolis, you get on the bus with others that share your circle interest and make new friends.
Sure. But there are some signature events that Historic Annapolis does.
The Mother's Day plant sale is weighted for year-round by people who, are
There's nothing that you guys offer that's not weighted for year-round, okay? Let's be real here.
That's probably true. You're absolutely right about that.
You look into June, you've got the Pecos Girlfriends Party, which was the brainchild of Judy Herman, who said, we need to have a fundraiser for Historic Annapolis.
Beautiful garden, right? I mean, why not use the garden to, people love it, and what a great event the Pecos Girlfriends is.
Yep. Then you look into the fall when the guys got all ticked off that they couldn't go to the Pecos Girlfriends party, and they got Blazers bourbon and cigars.
And you know what? We welcome, women are welcome at that, and men are certainly welcome if they want to show up at Pecos Girlfriends. We won't turn anybody down.
You've got Annapolis by Candlelight, which may or may not be happening again this year, I understand.
We're kind of watching, just the situation, because when people are so gracious to open their homes to the public, obviously, you want to make sure that it's safe. Yeah. So, we certainly have missed it these past couple of years. We offered it virtually, but there's nothing like the experience of walking the streets, on that cold, crisp evening air, and just feeling, the vibes of, colonial Annapolis at night, and, going into some of these older homes, and getting a chance to kind of, peek in and see what these homes look like.
How the other half lives.
Yeah, and the historic character of so many of them. To really get a chance to see inside. We get a chance to walk past them, but you sometimes wonder. I wonder what it looks like inside, and to see those historic, fabric mantles, to see the woodwork, the beautiful floors that many of them have.
Right, and you get all catty in the kitchen. Oh, I don't like the way they did those tiles, and you can do that as well. And perhaps my favorite, and I don't think it's an official event that you guys put on, but my favorite time is on July 4th in the
naturalization ceremony in the
right
garden.
Here.
And we're hoping that we will be able to bring that back this year. We're already talking with the people who help coordinate that. And of course, the 4th of July, there's no better 4th of July celebration than in the Pecos House and the Pecos Garden, as well as Hogshead. These places come alive. We have historic interpreters. So Maryland Day is always a great, wonderful weekend. Last weekend, we have the 4th of July coming up. And then, really, people should always be checking the Annapolis annapolis.org website, because there are things on so many weekends at the Peka House and at Hogshead. And they really are wonderful, wonderful events with living historians that basically do all this fabulous interpretation. And it's not just limited to certain holidays. In the spring and the summer, there's lots of events going on here that people should really check the website on a regular basis.
Well, that's fantastic. And the last thing I've got on my list here is that the Historic Annapolis store has closed.
Yes.
And is that now, and I know that they had a big sale to get rid of all the stuff that was in there. Is that online sale going to go on until they're out of inventory?
No, inventory will be transferred to the museum at 99 Main Street and to the William Peka House. So things will be able, people will be able to purchase some things. It will not be a gift shop per se anymore.
Right.
It would be museum store type of thing. So books that might interest people, some special things like the collectible annual holiday ornament. Those traditions will continue, but they will be offered through the museum location as well as at the Peka House.
Okay. Well, that store actually started out at 99 where the museum is, and then it slid down a couple doors to 77. What are you guys going to do with that? Are you looking to rent it out? I can give you $1,500 a month for it.
You'll have to talk to Robert Clark about that and what the future plans are for 77. Like I said, I'm the VP of Education. My focus is always on educational programs, and right now 77 Main is not on my plate.
Okay, note to self, give Robert Clark a call on 77 Main Street. Looks like a great place I could pick up for about $1,500 a month. Mary-Angela Hardwick, thank you so much for your time this morning. Again, everybody, get out to the Historic Annapolis Museum at 99 Main Street. You will not regret this at all. It's just a different look at the history of Annapolis, and it integrates everything that the other museums are doing and this wonderful city that we have, which is a living, thriving museum itself. And you have done an incredible job, putting it all together with your team and the curators and
I was going to say
the carpenters
it was an incredible team effort. I mean, the team of our senior historian Glenn our curator Robin Maddie, as well as others here at HA. I mean, there's so many different roles. I mean, a museum takes so much effort to put together. Everybody at HA really had a role in it, as well as then our wonderful museum exhibit designers, Design Minds, and our fabricators, Colorad. All of these individuals coming together in such an incredibly positive way, as well as our AV people, Hillman and Carr. So just incredibly fabulous, talented people at HA, as well as incredible, wonderful people that worked with us. And I think that when visitors come, so many people say, wow, I didn't expect this. This was a lot of fun. This was really interesting. I learned a lot, but I had a lot of fun doing it.
True. If I talk to some of the team, would they tell me you're a bridezilla?
I hope not. I hope not.
Fantastic. Get out to the Historic Annapolis Museum, Annapolis, An American Story, 99 Main Street. The best value you can get for $10 or less. As Mary-Angela said, there's plenty of discounts that are out there, and really dig deep into the history of Annapolis because it's really fascinating. A lot more than what you may cursorily, that's a tough word for me to say, see just walking around, and it really does tie it all together. And I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing it to us, and certainly Historic Annapolis for all of their continued commitment back with St. Clair Wright and where it all started to, hey, we've got something good here, we need to keep it, and everything that you continue to do, and I look forward to visiting that time and time and time again.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure talking with you, John.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.